transformed into a makeshift holding cell where the pro-democracy demonstrators have put people in them who were involved in the violence. And those people, one of them have shown me the ID card, which clearly shows that they belong to the state police.
A lot of people's, who captured some of these pro-Mubarak supporters then later confessed that they were paid or given, a few dollars here and there to come and agitate the protesters.
And a lot of the times they were handing these people who they'd arrested over to the military.
Now it appears to be the opposition demonstrators who appear to have the upper ground. They have advanced. They've taken over 2 flyovers which lead towards the bridge.
Sorry, when you say opposition demonstrators, do you mean those opposing the government or those opposing the government?
Anti-government demonstrators. They were using almost like medieval battleground techniques, using pieces of corrugated iron as shields, literally pushing forward.
So far, the army has done nothing to protect the anti-government protesters.
The army just pretty much seemed to melt away, and they just stood back and watched it happen. It was quite shocking.
They were not willing to try and stop this fight. And I think everybody was pretty shocked and pretty disappointed. But as for anger being shown towards the military, I didn't really see any of that, but that's probably because any attempt to show any animosity towards the military would only create a weakness in the battle itself.
In a way, it would have been difficult. Who would the army have fired on? Because the protesters were so mixed up at that stage.
Now, finally, it acts to separate the two sides. President Mubarak's government denies any part in the violence. It blames foreign spies and international media.
What you don't want as a journalist is to become part of the story. You want to report the story, but the government, the authorities, almost made us actors in this drama. They accused us of inciting the violence. So it was very difficult for us. Not only was there the general insecurity on the streets, but also the sense that we were being targeted ourselves.
Pictures of an Israeli passport put up. Foreigners were described as saboteurs, they were described as armed, some of them, and that they were trying to destabilize the state.
The mood on the street shifts to fear and anger at anyone who looks like a foreigner.
And we ended up in this fairly large square. I haven't a clue where it was, with a very large crowd there, chanting and pushing towards the cars. There were people with sticks, people with machetes, and then it was escalated. People were climbing on the car. I saw at the corner of my eye at this armoured personnel carrier, thankfully, and soldiers were getting out of that, and they were firing live shots over the heads of these people. We were pushed into the back of this armoured personnel carrier, and we were then handed over to the secret police. And then we were pushed into a bus, and the mood had changed dramatically at that point, because the bus moved forward, and the crowds were bashing against the windows of the bus. About half an hour later, we realized there were other journalists, every nationality you could think of. Not only that, humanitarian aid workers, doctors, business people. They basically orchestrated a huge campaign to pull in foreigners and to convince the general public that this was wholly an international plot.
We condemn in the strongest terms attacks on reporters covering the ongoing situation in Egypt.
Egypt's government is forced to apologize.
I apologized through all the media channels. I apologized through all the TV channels that I spoke with today. I apologized as a man who accepts responsibility.
The government offers another concession.
The president said, I will not nominate myself for presidency in the next elections, and therefore no one from his family will run. Neither the president nor his son will run.
Hosni Mubarak is determined to stay in power until his term ends in September.
He still does control the economy, he still does control the security forces, and he has very good relations with the army. The system has not abandoned him, and that's how he managed to survive.
Calm returns to Liberation Square. The army tightly controls entry points and keeps Mubarak supporters out. Inside, protesters are as defiant as their president.
The day of departure. The anti-Mubarak camp wants the biggest demonstration yet. The army has already moved into place. They say this is to keep both sides apart.
The government tries a new tactic. Egypt's new defense minister visits Liberation Square and pleads with protesters to go home. The numbers in Liberation Square keep rising. It's now a city within a city.
Tahrir Square itself, that half-kilometre, is a living, breathing example of real democracy. The fact that you see people from different social classes mixing together, people from the religious people, secular people, Muslims, Christians. It's a real melting pot, and it's very democratic because anyone has the right to speak. The very fact that they're allowed to speak their minds is seen as an achievement in itself.
Opposition groups are still rejecting offers from the Mubarak out now.
He should hear the clear voice coming from the people and live in dignity.
America seems to agree.
In order for Egypt to have a bright future, which I believe it can have, the only thing that will work is moving an orderly transition process that begins right now.
Minutes away from the military lockdown near Liberation Square, downtown Cairo is bustling. Banks open for the first time in a week, petrol stations stocked. But everyone here knows it's still not business as usual.
It's not easy to keep a mass protest going for 12 days.
People want to feel that normality is back, that it's safe to go about their business, that people can open their shops, people can go to school or whatever. So there is that thirst for normality. And yet there remains this focal point, Tahrir Square, which is completely closed to traffic and is still the epicenter of this protest. It seems that people will go about their normal business during the day, but when it's a day of demonstration, they will go to the square. They may only go for an hour or two, they may go early in the morning, they may go late at night, but the demonstration lives on, but life is going on as well.
There is yet another plea to the occupants of Liberation Square.
The head of the Army's Central Command came to ask them to go home so the country could go back to normal. They chanted back, "We're not leaving, he is."
And another attempt to appease the protesters.
Egyptian TV announces big changes in the ruling party. Gone are the executive committee and the president's son, Gamal Mubarak. But it's the father who's got to go for the demonstrators.
The presidency, though, is still a non-negotiable.
You don't run a